my name is Alyssa, and today's guest is ABC News foreign correspondent Jeffrey Kofman. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for asking me to be on.
So you did your undergraduate here, and you got a degree in politics. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Well, you know, I never imagined when I sat in political studies classes and history and economics classes here at Queen's that what I was learning was going to apply to my everyday life. It was interesting most of the time, and it was, I think mostly I really enjoyed studying it. But what I never imagined was how relevant it would be to what I do for a living, because now, as a foreign correspondent for years, I've been watching all that political theory and all that economic theory and all those lessons of history unfold in front of me, and reporting on most recently on the Arab Spring and the revolutions in Libya, Tunisia, but before that in Iraq, and I covered Latin America for 10 years and witnessed all these movements for democratic change. And so it's incredible to think that all of that stuff actually was relevant, but it is.
So when did you become interested in journalism, and can you give us a brief history of how you got to be where you are today?
Shortly after I came out of the womb, I think I wanted to be a journalist. I'm not sure I can identify the day, but ever since I was a kid, I think I drove my parents crazy because I used to read loved reading the newspaper, and I would stay up and watch CBC and CTV National, which when I was really young, were both on at 11 p.m. I always wanted to see the world and to discover it, and I don't know, maybe try to understand it and explain it, but I thought I'd be in print reporting. But I guess I was involved in student journalism in high school, but here at Queen's I got involved in the Queen's Journal, helped start a publication called the Queen's Journal magazine that lasted a few years, and edited it, and cut my teeth in broadcasting at CFRC radio. I really thought I was frankly going into print. I wanted to go to newspapers and magazines, but I did some work at the Edmonton Journal after I graduated from Queen's, then went traveling through Asia for almost a year and came back to Toronto, where I'm from, and there was a recession and nobody was hiring, and a friend of mine at Global TV, who was a young intern, said, "Oh, they're always firing people here, why don't you apply?" So I did, and because I'd had this pretty exotic experience, I'd written a bit when I was traveling in Asia, they hired me, and it wasn't really a plan, but 30 years later I'm still in television.
So you mentioned that you covered the Arab Spring in Libya and Tunisia and elsewhere. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience? Well,
it's one of the most powerful experiences of my career. To actually witness an oppressive dictatorship crumble is really something that stays with you. I was in Libya when it began, February 17th of 2010. I went to the Libyan border, eventually got in, and I was there under Gaddafi's dictatorship as foreign guests. The media were kept in a couple of hotels, and we couldn't leave without what they called minders, government eyes and ears, who literally took us and followed us and told us, no, you can't go there, no, you can't shoot that. And it was the most suffocating place. I mean, and also this incredibly rich country, $1 billion a week in oil revenue, and the poorest people you can imagine. And I began to really dislike it. Not the people, but it was so airless. And then I was there a year ago, August, when Gaddafi fell. And that was one of the most powerful days of my life, watching the walls of his compound, this forbidden city that he and his family lived in, get knocked over and blown up, and going in with all these rebel soldiers. And the sense of jubilation, the sense of freedom that day will stay with me forever. You could really taste it and smell it. These people had really been locked in the cellar for 42 years, and suddenly the sunlight was allowed in, and the sense of euphoria was to be with a people, a nation, on the moment of their freedom after 42 years of oppressive dictatorship is a powerful experience.
So on another note, you also cover news like in extreme weather, like hurricanes and things like that. What is that like, and why did you decide to put yourself through that?
I didn't decide. I was ABC News correspondent based in Miami, covering Florida, the Caribbean, and Latin America. So I wore a number of hats. I didn't really want to cover all those hurricanes, but when you are based there, hurricanes come every summer, and there was a particularly bad period in 2004, 2005 when it just felt like a pinball machine. They were just shooting, Hurricane Alley they called it. We had 4 major hurricanes each year, and that was also, '05 was the year of Hurricane Katrina. Yeah. And it's a bit like Groundhog Day, to be honest. I mean, it is something to see the force of nature, but to be whacked by it relentlessly is really not that much fun. And it's sad to see people's livelihood destroyed. I mean, it's an adventure, and it's fine until people, until you see the misery it causes. But you begin to really respect nature, and it's amazing. In my job, when you do these things enough, you actually learn a lot of science, whether it's covering hurricanes or covering the Gulf oil spill. And suddenly, I spent 4 months in the Mississippi Delta and around New Orleans, and I spent my nights talking to academics involved in coastal biology, petroleum science, and deep ocean science, and learning these things that were just beyond comprehension, so that I could try to simplify them and explain to viewers just what the impact of all that oil was going to be. So it's constant learning, which is what I love about it.
Related to that, you seem to be very interested in stories about the environment or animals and things like that. I know you did a story on monarch butterflies and a story on blue whales. So can you tell us about why you think these issues are important for people to know about?
Well, the environmental and animal stories are a double-edged sword in television. I mean, because the honest truth is that viewers love them. Yeah. And you can't be naive about programming, especially feature stories. The news is the news. What's happening in the Middle East or in the American election that just passed, you got to cover that. But when you have resources to spend on feature stories, you've got to be cognizant of, will people be engaged and interested? And where the monarch butterflies spend their winter in Mexico, the monarchs from Canada and the northeastern US, is a pretty spectacular experience. And it makes for great TV. And it's also got a bigger, broader story because their habitat is disappearing. Mm-hmm. And so, it's not just a kind of, golly gee, look at these amazing pictures. For sure. But I have to say, it was pretty amazing. We rode up on horseback, the cameraman on one horse, and another with these guides. And this entire pine forest was covered in monarch butterflies. I'm not talking about a few thousand, but millions and millions. Just absolute wallpaper of butterflies. But, we then looked at the logging industry around it. The whale story was just an amazing story because they had thought that population had gone extinct, and through just an incredibly interesting accident of research, they discovered a whole population of hundreds of blue whales in southern Chile that nobody knew had existed. Yeah. And so, that was just a magical story of how they found it. And it's such an exotic place, Patagonia in southern Chile, and it doesn't get more beautiful than where I got to go. One of the dividends of this job is that I have been so lucky to go to so many interesting and exotic places. I've lost count, but 60-something countries, and what a thrill. Some of them are not so easy. When you go to Iraq or Haiti, those are not what I would call fun assignments. They're interesting and they matter, but they're and sometimes they're incredibly fulfilling. But I wouldn't use the word fun to describe them.
Yeah. So clearly, you're very well traveled. What is your favorite country to visit and why?
I've been asked that before. My stock answer is it's usually the last country I've been to, or the last new country I've been to. There are a few. I think I have a real soft spot for Latin America. Studying at Queen's, a degree in politics, I didn't do a single course in Latin American studies, which is really funny because I ended up specializing in Latin America. And I have to say, I really love the countries of Latin America. They're in various states of progress or decline. Brazil and Colombia are really moving forward. And, Colombia is a country most Canadians know nothing about. Yeah. And yet, it's one of my favorite places in the world. Spectacularly beautiful. it was so violent, and now it's been incredibly pacified. And it's really, I think it's, you know, it's a country with a great future now. And Venezuela, I would like to say I love, but it's just really in terrible decline. It's incredibly violent.
Yeah.
You know, I'm incredibly curious. So I don't think about the last country. I think of the countries I haven't been to that I really want to go to, and there's still a good list of them. And you know, I've been to South Africa, but I've never been to Cape Town. I haven't been to Morocco. I've been all around, but I've never actually been to Lebanon. I'd love to see Beirut. It's an incredible world. I'm very lucky to have seen so many places, but there's so many more to see. It's really a treat to have access to so many of these places.
Well, thank you for being on the show today, and thank you for watching QTV Profiles.
Thank you.